I kind of wanted to stray away from the name. I was like, man, it doesn't make sense. Like tacos and tattoos. They're like, no, stick with it.
If you don't believe it, if you don't think it, it ain't gonna happen.
I lost focus.
Why tacos?
I don't know how they believed in me.
All right, so we got the owner of Tacos and Tattoos, Mr. Jay Cruz. How's it going, my brother? How you doing today?
Everything is amazing. How you doing, bro?
Doing fantastic, bro.
Thank you.
So to give you an idea of what we're going to be doing today, Jay, we're going to kind of walk through your journey on how you were able to run such a successful spot, and you run multiple businesses, and we'll get into all of that. But Tacos and Tattoos being, at this point, a house for a lot of the folks that we know here in Miami, not just Kendall, but really everywhere else. A vision that is not unique. It's not like everything else. We really want to know how you got to that. And the goal is really hopefully to touch somebody who might be in your shoes, in the shoes you were in a few years back. And hopefully touch them and inspire them a little bit, man. Somebody's going to listen that's going to take something from this. And that's always been our goal here. So
Sweet.
Let's start right in the beginning, Jay. We'll jump right into it. Where were you born? Where did you grow up? Kind of walk us through your upbringing. And then we'll let that lead into, obviously, your professional journey.
Amazing. So I was born in Orlando, Florida. My parents had just got to Florida from Puerto Rico. Both my parents are Puerto Rican. And Orlando was where we had some family. So it was easy for them to get there and start a new life. And by the time my parents got here, I believe my mom was already pregnant. A couple months later, she gave birth to me. At the time, she was working at Disney, and my dad was working a couple restaurant jobs. And to fast forward a little bit, about a year later, we moved to Homestead. Homestead was our first area in South Florida that we got to. We were living in Homestead for about a year till Hurricane Andrew came, wiped us out. And so my parents had to restart again, and we got relocated by FEMA to Tampa and was in Tampa for 2 or 3 years. My dad ends up getting a job as a post mailman. We moved back to Miami, and since that point, we've been in Miami. And that was right around when I was like 4 or 5 years old. We got to the Gables first. We lived in the Gables for a little bit. Then we got to Flagler. And eventually, by the time I was like maybe 7 years old, made it to Kendall.
Got it.
And Kendall's been my home since then. I have lived in other parts of the country, and I have lived in other parts of the world, but those were always very scarce. It was more so predominantly in Kendall and exploring South Florida from Kendall.
Got it. So you're a Kendall boy through and through.
I'm a Kendall boy through and through, yes, sir. Did elementary, the end of my elementary in Kendall. Went to Sunset Park Elementary. Then I did Arvida Middle School. And then I went to Killian.
Nice.
Yep.
All right. Fantastic. So moved around, young kid, then you kind of settled down here in Miami.
Yes, sir.
Coming up, where obviously your dad worked as a mailman. Did he retire as a mailman? Did he work?
He didn't. My dad ended up following a federal career.
Okay.
He did. He was a deportation officer for a while. Really? Still federal. He was already ex-Marine by that point. Okay. Still federal. Okay. Postman. Still federal. Gotcha. And so he worked his way through the ranks through ICE, and nice. Followed a career as a special agent for Homeland Security. And now he's retired and he's doing really well.
That's amazing.
My mother ended up in banking. She's been in banking for over 25 years now. I want to say like 27 probably. Okay. And she's done really well for herself as well. Two people who really had nothing, and now basically are those statues in our family, that those pillars that really keep us afloat. So,
and that was my question. You answered my next question, which was, you obviously had stability in the house. Clearly, your dad being obviously a federal employee, and I always got taught something by one of our friends, Alex here, who always told me, if you want to make money, start a business. If you want job security, get a government job.
Yes, sir.
And obviously, you grew up in an environment where you kind of saw both sides of it.
Yes, sir.
From your mom being in the corporate America world to your dad in the government.
While they maintained these jobs, they never strayed too far from their roots and the streets that taught them how to grow up. So, it was a mix of both worlds that clashed, and it was great to see that, because honestly, it made me who I am today. And, I put them through things that they didn't deserve, and I know that, you know what I mean? But I owe them the success that I've had for sure, because that's the foundation that really ended up making me later. And
they did a great job, clearly. But, yeah, I would love to know that first conversation when you came home with your first tattoo.
Oh, man.
How old were you?
I was 15 when I got my first tattoo. And ironically enough, it was my dad who took me. And so he kind of shouted out. He was like, hey, listen, if you bring home straight A's this semester, well, I'll take you to get your first tattoo. And to them, that was a long shot. To them, that was like, yeah,
He was
right.
ahead of his time, though, in modern day parenting.
Yeah. And I went ahead and brought home some straight A's. It was the first time in my school career I had brought home straight A's. I think I was in 9th grade. And I took it serious because I really wanted that tattoo. I had a love for the subculture. I had a love for art already. And I knew I wanted this. So I knew what it was going to take to get it. And when I brought home that report card, my dad kind of batted his eyes a little bit. He was like, well, I shot myself in the foot. I'm going to go ahead and do this with him. So we went and we got matching tattoos together. Nice. And that was just a gateway into me not asking permission for tattoos anymore, like.
That's dope, though. I mean, right. I got my first one at 15 too, but nobody took me. I lied. Flea market, $20.
Yeah, nice.
Crooked ass in my mom's thing. And I thought I would get away with that, and it didn't work.
It happens.
My ass beat, but it's all good.
Yeah.
So you went to Killian. You were getting straight A's. Did you finish school? Kind of walk us through your education before we go right into when you started working.
Heard that. I think straight A's would be not in my vocabulary. I didn't get that. That was for the tattoo for sure. But after that, there was a rebellious stage in my life where I think I was more into what was happening around me. And it could have been influence of friends. It could have been influence of just the things I was interested in. But I lost focus for sure. Okay. And by the time I was in, I'd say early junior year, maybe like a month into it, I had already pretty much quit on going to school. I had decided that school was something that I didn't need. And, I don't know if at the time I was being naive, or I just felt this feeling that I needed to grow up faster than I should have been. But I left. I dropped out of high school. Wow. My parents were not happy about that at all. Nobody in my family was. They definitely saw me on a path that was dangerous. And, this wasn't the foundation that I had grown up with. So it was a moment, and it was a time in my life that it was pretty gray,
Yeah, so you dropped out. You were probably, 17?
I was about 17 when I dropped out. Did you start
working right away? What was the plan once you dropped out? Like, what'd you do then?
Well, when I dropped out, my dad had definitely put his foot down. If you're going to drop out, we're going to feel the pressures of the real world, which were get a job. And I immediately did get a job. By that time, I was in and out of living at my house and not. I was either living with either an ex-girlfriend at the time or friends. And, I was kind of jumping around and I needed money. So what better way to make some money than to get into the restaurant life? And I'm glad I did, because I think it would have been drugs outside of that. Yeah. So I definitely strayed into the restaurant life, and I found a niche within that community. I knew that I could practice being social. I knew that I could meet a lot of people. It was a fast-paced gig. It kind of put money in my pocket when I needed it. So it just worked with my lifestyle at the time, and I pretty much proceeded to take restaurant jobs from there on out.
So that's what you did from the moment you were 17. At what point did you go from I'm waiting tables or bartending, whatever the case may be, to okay, I want to maybe start my own spot?
And that it was it probably took from 17 to 23.
Okay.
So that gap of 8 years, right?
And what type of restaurants you working?
I worked. My first restaurant job was on the border. I worked there as a fry cook. And then I worked my way up to host, busser, then a server. And right at the end of that server career out on the border, I'd saved some money, moved to Spain, did some backpacking, and lived in Barcelona and did some stuff.
I was not expecting that.
Yeah. I was again, my parents were not happy with me yet. You know what I mean? There was no stability for me. I pretty much saved money to travel.
Okay.
So when I got back from Spain a couple months later, did the whole France, Spain thing, backpack, all that. Got another job at Lulu in the Grove.
Okay.
And that's a sister restaurant to Green Street. And there I learned how to pretty much become the best server I could be. The dynamic changed entirely. I went from a chain restaurant to a boutique restaurant, right. And I noticed and I took in more of the hospitality world. And things were a little more tedious. The details were a little more important. Wine started to become a conversation that I was having a lot more. Right. And I learned real fast that alcohol was the language of the rich. So those were things that definitely taught me how to navigate through selling people what I needed to.
Okay.
And
So that's the job that basically where you actually learn, not so much the hospitality stuff, but the attention to detail and I would say maybe
absolutely.
the business aspect of the
I
restaurant
definitely
industry.
saw the limelight in a boutique restaurant, and the differences between what a chain could do and what privately owned would
Right.
do. Something else that opened my eyes at that moment was the owner of the restaurant. I think there was a moment where we were on a Friday night. It was really busy. Both restaurants were popping, and he was walking from one restaurant to the other, just crossing the street. But he had a champagne flute in his hand, and the smile from ear to ear. And as I saw him walking over, I was like, "Oh shit!"
It's one of
Like,
those moments that
I,
you
I,
saw your future self maybe.
yeah, like that. I want that to be me. I want a Land Rover Defender like his. I want to hold my champagne flute and kind of stare out at like what I've built. And knowing a little more about his story, I definitely found that as inspiration.
Yep. And it's crazy because that's how it starts. So, like you
It
see
does.
somebody else and you like that could be me.
Absolutely.
And yeah, maybe naively you know to think that that will be you, but if you don't believe it, if you don't think it, it ain't gonna happen.
Without manifesting,
Yeah, 100%, dude. Everything that's happened to me, Alex can vouch for this. Like, I have the craziest manifestation power of all time. Like, I say shit and it starts coming to fruition. But
Yes,
I
sir.
think the mind is so strong that
That's the power.
yeah. First, I did it subconsciously. I think you probably subconsciously did it at that time, and then you start learning how to control that.
It's one of
And
my favorite ways of thinking, or favorite things to resort back to, is my subconscious
That's
and
an
how
amazing
powerful I know that is.
It's an amazing thing, man. So, all right. So you worked there for a few years. Let's turn the page right into when you decided that you wanted to start your own spot. I've seen your restaurant. It's huge. It's beautiful.
Thank
I
you.
know you didn't start there. So walk me through how did the idea come about and what was it like? Where did you go? Was it a food truck? Was it a smaller spot? What did you do? And kind of walk us through that if you can.
Sure. So it came a point where I was working on the board. I'm sorry, at Burger and Beer Joint in Brickell. I was towards the end of my, what I'd say, my working for someone career. And my father was telling me he was thinking about moving to, I believe it was West Virginia. Okay. And he kind of gave it to me. He was like, listen, I've got a little bit of funds acquired, not to invest, but more so to move with your mom to West Virginia and maybe basically start something new. Or we stay in Miami and we invest in this restaurant we've been talking about for the last couple months. And it was right around April of 2014.
2014, okay.
2014, right around April. And so I was kind of left with this decision where, do I pursue this with my parents at this age? I had kind of shot them the idea a couple times. And reason I had this idea was because I witnessed a restaurant sale happen in front of me at Burger and Beer Joint. And I saw the check that owner collected.
Well, he sold.
So I was already asking the right questions. What does it take to open up a restaurant? What do I need? Will I be supported? And quickly I realized that, yes, this is something that I can do. And it's because I was throwing a party at a bar in random Kendall, and the gentleman was probably selling $300 a night. I threw one party and I sold him like $2,000. And I invited my parents to that party, and they were like, oh shit, like this guy's got a gift for
really
putting people
people
together
yeah.
in the same place. So that was kind of the eye opener within the family. And that, with them leaving, I think my choice was at that moment where, like, if we don't do this now, I'll never do this with my parents. I'll probably end up doing this when I'm 40, 50 with an investor maybe. My life, my path could have been completely different, but we all formally chose to run with it. We were like, all right. They looked at me and they were like, Jay, you're going to have to find out how we're going to do this shit.
Right.
We're going to take a step back. We'll find the budget to make it happen. So my mom takes out about $40,000 from her 401k, and my dad puts his Amex on the counter, and he's like, I got $60K I could put on this card. He's like, that's all the money we got. So it's 100 G's here, and they're not even ours. Yeah. I get penalized if I don't pay this back, right. And we got to pay back this card.
100%.
So with that 100 G's, I started scouting. Started looking at food trucks. I was going to put a food truck in front of a tattoo shop. It made sense. Tacos and tattoos. And I was like, okay, this might work. Started fucking around with the city, talking to the city. Deny for several logistic reasons, right? Okay. So as we looked for a location to open that we could afford, I kind of wanted to stray away from the name. I was like, man, it doesn't make sense. Like tacos and tattoos. They're like, no, stick with it. It's going to work. Yeah. TNT sounds like a ticking time bomb. Like, right. Go ahead and rock with that. And I was like, all right, fine. We stuck with it. we end up finding a space inside the neighborhood where I grew up from. So now I'm in Sable Chase. Fast forward, if you know about Kendall, you know Sable Chase is a very small, quaint neighborhood. You don't know about it unless you know.
Right.
Inside of Sable Chase is a shopping center, very small. There was a Colombian restaurant there that was closing. Had 10 legal seats inside. We scouted it. I liked the location because I knew right away that if I opened up in this location, my friends that still live around here and still don't know what to do are going to come.
They're going to go pull up every day.
They're going to pull up. And that's essentially how I
was born.
I went ahead and took, the leap of faith and leased that first location, built it out with these hands right here.
Was 100 G's enough to build it out and kind of get it rolling?
You know, in April was when we kind of like got everything happening. In May, I quit my burger and beer joint job. Throughout that summer, I built out the location. By the time we opened doors, January 2nd, which, about 6 months later,
right.
We were already looking for more money. Yeah, we were already drained out. It wasn't enough. We had made several mistakes that the city wouldn't allow us to open. So it was barely enough. I think we opened up with maybe $1,000 left in the account to make something happen. And we had enough to make that first purchase and make $500 our first day opening. So
it says, you basically, you had it built up, but you're starting with zero because you don't have any operating capital to run and you got to pay rent, you got to pay.
And we didn't have
inventory.
We didn't even have the license to sell beer. Jeez. I don't even think we had a TV on the wall yet. You know, the things, they came in as we grew.
And was it white tacos?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking. Tacos has a weird place in my heart since the beginning of time for me. I believe my dad's best friend worked at a Taco Bell when I was born. So outside the hospital, he took me to go show me off. And that story kind of stuck with me. Fast forward a couple more years later, I find out my uncle had a taqueria in Puerto Rico named El Taquito, which was really popping. So that kind of also like marinated with our family. Then we always hosted boxing fights at my house every Saturday. It could have been amateur, could have been pro, but we were watching all the boxing. And my uncle would bring tacos, and I just loved them. I love the crunchy. I love the handheld. They're just fire, you know. So we knew that tacos was probably the way to go for us.
That's your passion, clearly. You like to eat it.
Yeah.
And then did the name come up from you wanting to put the food truck in front of the tattoo shop, or how'd you come up with the name? Was it just that?
That was what kind of kicked off the name.
Okay.
But as we kept the name, I started to find more subcultures related to it, and it really fit me. You know, I had most of these tattoos before I opened, and I got turned down several times because I had so many tattoos. So my life kind of led me into that name and to like kind of own it. So, you know, there was a moment where I felt it was corny, and then everything shifted for me when it became a reality. Because I was like, all right, you kind of make it what you want, 100%. You know? And I made that what it is. And so that's kind of how we stuck with that name.
Now, before I get into how you ended up at a bigger location, I want you to explain to me how you, who dropped out of 17, who was either hospitality or, your own words, maybe drugs, how did you talk your parents into believing in you to open a restaurant?
You know, we're going to hit 10 years this year. Now, January 4th would be 10 years for us. We're going to celebrate it. And I ask myself that question pretty much once a year, right when we get around to the time where I'm celebrating another anniversary. Because, you know, I don't know how they believed in me. I ask myself all the time, what was it that they saw in me at the time? And to me, I know that I was confident in doing this. Right. I had all the faith in the world to make this happen. And I strongly believe it was a way for us to keep that family dynamic all the way tight. And it's proven to be that. Yeah. We have had blood, sweat, and tears throughout this. I've seen my mother cry several times, just as many times as I've cried and my dad's cried. Like, it's been a rough road. Yeah. But it's kept us as together as we've ever been. And I'm closer to my parents now than I've ever been, you know?
It's amazing.
So it's definitely, it was a big leap of faith. And I I feel like now I owe that to them, and I'm here to not let this slip out of our hands because of it. You know,
100%.
for my kids
So
now.
that's what keeps you running too.
Yes,
I would
sir.
imagine.
Absolutely.
It was a wonderful story, dude. Because
Thank you.
I mean, you could have all the confidence in the world, but what 22-year-old doesn't?
Yeah.
You know,
Actually,
like
yeah.
you're older now. If a kid that's 22 comes up to you now and tells you, "Give me $100 grand and I have a great idea," you're gonna be like, "Hold on, tell me again." So that's obviously a testament to the belief, but also the love your parents have for you, man, which
Absolutely.
is amazing. It's a beautiful story because a lot of us don't have the fortune of having our parents involved in their businesses.
Absolutely.
And dude, so I healthily envy you right now because I'm close to my family too, but we don't really work together, and I wish we did.
Understood.
So back to the restaurant. So you opened it. How long were you in that spot, in the first spot in Kendall? How long did you guys operate out of there?
Our very first year, we stayed inside that location. It was, again, another blessing. Every day, we just doubled in the amount of guests receiving. You know, first day opened, we were able to sell $500, whatever that was, between 10 seats. Right. Second day, we sold 1,000. Third day, we're selling 1,500. So every day, it just kept doubling and more and more.
That's crazy.
And so within that first year, we had sold $1 million out of that tiny little space.
That's fucking insane.
And that was crazy. No one could believe it.
I'm familiar with the restaurant industry. My family's been in the restaurant industry. That's not normal.
That was not normal. That was not normal. But to give it to you in best perspective, I made more money then in my pocket than I do now with 3 times the size. And the irony there is crazy. But it doesn't change the fact that it's always been awesome, you know?
And what's going through your mind as you guys are like selling $1,000, $2,000 a day, and you're like, holy fuck, this shit actually works? Like, what is going through your mind? What are your parents telling you? Are you guys just working alone? Do you hire more employees? Like, what was the feeling like of seeing it come to fruition so quickly?
Well, it was 100% surreal. Didn't feel real. It felt like, it always felt like it could be taken away at any moment too. So both those feelings were mutual, you know? And it was always a sense of gratitude for the community that's supporting it. And I always try to find ways to involve my community, which I think made my restaurant so strong. Because it wasn't just an area you went to go get tacos. I hosted bike rides. I did events at night. I brought new beers in. I was the only location at the time outside of World of Beer that had the selection of beers that I had. By the time we got a beer license, you know, so everything came in stages, épocas, 1, 2, 3, you know, so it was always investing into the business and finding ways to capture the culture. I also designed all of our merch. I designed all of the gear. I was always hitting notes that nobody else was doing. All the tables had the artwork. It looked like a slice of Wynwood in the middle of Kendall, you know, so we always kind of played with that. And it really was just an extension of my high school bedroom, but now legally selling alcohol, you know, or legally selling tacos. It never really drifted too far from that. And it was something I believed in, and it just kept happening. And so about a year after we were open, we realized that we could probably handle a bigger location. Ironically enough, in that same shopping center, 2 doors down, there was a location twice as big. Now, from 10 seats, I could have 25 seats. And so we built out the second store in the same shopping center.
So you sold $1 million with a capacity of 10 people in your restaurant?
Yeah.
Fuck.
Legally. You know, sometimes you might have seen 20, 25. We would have put a chair anywhere to have somebody sit down.
You kept the doors open and people went outside. Yeah.
People tailgated. Yeah. Like, it was a movie for sure, bro.
Bands, I get it, but still,
people were,
it's insane.
But we drifted off into the second store to then sit everyone. Because as I grew, my hospitality also grew. You know, I found it weird that people were tailgating. I wanted them inside the store. I wanted them to receive tableside service. I wanted them to get the food fresh and hot, not to go. Right. You know, I always wanted to scale up. I never wanted to stay stagnant. I felt if I didn't reinvest into myself, it would become complacent for everyone. And just like, again, something that people in a year would just find, okay, you know, this is here. Like it's not relevant anymore. It's not popping. Yeah. So I always,
or a wave. We see that a lot. You see spots that blow up for a few months, a year or two, and then they kind of die out.
Yeah, and it happens. And being relevant is probably now my biggest battle. Yeah. It's not necessarily so much maintaining the beautiful chic store that it is. Yeah. It's becoming relevant in my community and something that's still exciting to come to. Something that people want to come around and be like, oh shit, what the hell is going on over here? like, damn, they're still doing that.
Right.
Oh, they're out of control. You know, like we got to go see though. So
That's crazy. So you moved to the 25.
we moved to the bigger location. Another blessing, right? I was able to now have a little more funding. I got crazy with the murals inside the store. We did the floors. Again, with these hands, we built that. And it was great. We were buying more restaurant equipment. I kept the original location as a prep room. So I blacked out the windows, made it a prep room. And by that time, opened up a food truck as well, partnered up with some of the homies over at Lincoln's Beard. So the business was definitely starting to grow. This time I'm 25, 26. I'm seeing all of this kind of flourish in front of me, and the opportunities are growing. And that's kind of what we were going through for those couple years. And there came a moment where we're going to go into the big one,
Right.
where Shula Burger was operating inside of the shopping center off of 117th and 104. And I found out a lot about the restaurant industry from making that purchase, because I always saw Shula Burger as like, wow, like, how are they failing? You know, this is a household name, Shula, you know, like in Florida. Why would they be failing? You know, I didn't know if it was the price point, the location. And when I bought the store, or when I was leasing out the location and buying the stuff inside, I got to meet some of the executives for Shula. And they were just letting me know that was always just a test store for them. They only opened that store to grab analytics and run. So while they had that store, they sold the franchise nationwide. And this was always planned to make its 5-year run and just kind of die out. It wasn't for that. It was to be in hospitals and airports and around the nation. So I was like, oh shit, like this is how this works. So every time I make another move, I realize that the industry, I'm still 10 steps behind the big dog. Right. You know what I mean? There's ways to really make a big bag off of this, you know?
And obviously keep growing.
Keep growing. But anyways, it was, again, another surreal move for me, because I grew up right down the street. So I saw, before Shula Burger was even there, I saw it as a grass field. So then I see this location go up, Shula Burger, and then I see it go down, and I'm like, oh shit, like, could this be mine? And so now we're at a race. It's between me and La Granja, and Publix has the bigger say here.
Yeah, because you're in a public shopping center. And I know about that because I worked at T-Mobile, and you couldn't do shit when you were in a public shopping center.
Yes, sir. And Publix, shout out to them because they gave me that opportunity. But I'll get there. There was a moment before I leased this location where Publix had a bowling team. And organically, I sponsored that bowling team. It wasn't much. Probably gave me like $200-$300 a year to get my logo on their shirts. But I did it religiously for 2-3 years because I was homies with the Publix people. I was there, you know, with emergencies trying to get cilantro when I needed it, you know. So they knew my face. And they asked me about the sponsorship. I did that. Long story short, when I go lease that location inside that shopping center, I feel like that kind of gave me that push I needed, because La Granja, they're OGs. Right. Yeah, they got locations everywhere. They're promising. They're a tenant that they're going to pay rent. Right. We're a gamble. They're going to give it to us, and they're going to be like, oh, shit, are they going to pay the rent? Right. Is it going to work? And they chose us. They gave me that opportunity. I outbid La Granja.
That's a good story, bro. And how big is that location now?
That location's 3,500 square feet. Okay. 3,500 square feet. So I basically doubled again my second store. Still in the same neighborhood, still the same concept. And it gave me the opportunity again about 5 years down the line. Now we're like in 2019-ish. It gave me the opportunity to design another store. And so again, that's my biggest attribute, is making things happen, you know? So I went, designed the entire layout, where the equipment's gonna go, what the store's gonna look like. Again, murals, paintings, working with artists, activating. And that's how we ended up in that store. And we've been at that location off 117th and 104 for about a little over 5 years now.
You opened in 19, right?
2019, yeah.
I remember when you guys were opening. I actually used to work for Comcast doing door-to-door sales. And
heard.
I would like search for every new business coming up. This is a true story. And I think we couldn't sell Comcast. Maybe maybe you already had it. I don't know.
You can't. I think that you guys, like, it's a cutoff or something.
I think that's what it was, because I remember thinking, damn, they're opening a spot here, not knowing who owned it or anything like that, but small world. All right, so obviously you experienced tremendous growth. What growth comes, and you mentioned it earlier, you know, a lot of growing pains. What were some of the mistakes, if any at all, but I'm sure you made some that that you learned from, obviously, because you're still here, but that you guys went through in those first few years that if you look back, maybe, you wouldn't make the same mistake again, obviously, knowing what you know now?
Wow, so many mistakes have been made along the way. One of the biggest mistakes I made in my early years was not really taking the business aspect of it as serious as I needed to. There's so much involved when it comes to money. Money's so sensitive. So I should have definitely taken seminars, read more books, and focused more on the business aspect of my restaurant and how to target new clients and how to deal with certain negotiations and where to invest my money into and how to use my money correctly. So I lost a lot of money. We could call it in the hundreds of thousands, maybe even the millions. I've lost because of decisions that I made maybe too late or just never made the decision at all. So that's probably one of the biggest factors. Then there's always the smaller scale, and I'm not saying that stealing from me is a smaller scale. I'm just saying that it happens a little more scarce. But there's always that rotten apple within the community. There's always that natural disaster that may have hit and really caused a headache. And then, yes, I might have seen the money later in insurance causes or whatnot, but insurance claims.
Right.
But realistically, at the moment, what do you do? And how do you come out of pocket again to subsidize, to make it happen? And then, one of my biggest wake-up calls was the COVID that everybody got slapped with. So that was a worldwide problem. And no one was ready for it. And so how do I make my business COVID proof for next time? Now this is a clause on my contract if you want to open one with me. You know what I mean? I have the means to get us by another pandemic. And that's because I learned that from, that moment that happened. So I want to say I'm really good at adapting. And that's one of the reasons why we've been able to survive for so long.
All right. So you touched on a few great points. I want to cover the first one before we go into the pandemic and get a little bit more details there. But you didn't take it serious on the business side. Do you attribute that maybe to being young, maybe to just being so passionate about getting the community together and designing things and it being fun to where like you're focused on the fun side? What do you think caused you maybe, because we all care about money,
Absolutely.
even if it doesn't drive us, because I'm not motivated by money. I like nice things, but money's not really my principal thing. And I get the sensation that clearly it's not if you were focusing on maybe the fun things. What do you think attributed the most inexperience to you not really?
I think the biggest problem I had was not making enough time and maybe applying time to things that were getting in the way of the business aspect of it. So I might have maybe picked up a kitchen shift and worked the actual line rather than sit back and look at the numbers in front of me. Instead of maybe working with one provider, I should have worked with three so that I could have always had them competing for pricing. So I'm very loyal. I love putting my word down and making sure that I accomplish that. Right. And that might be one of my biggest disadvantages in the business realm, because I struggled a lot with, cutting the problem when it was in front of me. Instead, I gave second chances and thirds. And maybe that's why I'm this successful, because I work that way. But at the same time, I've seen my pocket definitely hurt because of it. So it's time. It's time and complacency that definitely put me, again, with great success. There's also great determination you need and discipline. And I definitely slacked in discipline in those realms for a while. Ask me now, though.
And that's what it's all about. I think most new people in business, especially younger ones, struggle with that. I mean, I'm the same way, dude. I don't like telling people no. And I've had to learn how to say no. I don't like, if I work with one guy that does whatever, I want to work with that guy forever. And you kind of see the signs early on. I'm yet to give a second chance, and the second chance, the person took advantage of it. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm over in my career in business. If somebody messed up once and I give them an opportunity, they mess up again. And I think you probably, asking you now, you probably grown to the point where like it's a little easier to identify. Correct me if I'm wrong here.
Absolutely.
And easier to even make the decision because you start caring a lot more about what the consequences could be.
I've also learned how to remove myself from the situation
That's
and
a
put
big
people
one.
in place to make these decisions
So that's
for
big.
me so that they don't come directly through me. And it definitely has helped, structure a business that is profitable and successful because, this may be the closest person to me, but they might be the biggest debt that I have.
100%.
And, over losing a friendship because of my loyalty or losing a partnership because of my loyalty, I've removed myself from the situations and I've had these things come up where we no longer can do business together. We probably don't even talk to each other anymore. But what's great about it is when I run into you at the bar, we see each other, we give a hug and a kiss and I love you again. And this shit squashed,
Leave that behind, of course. And I think you're doing it right. Hire to your weaknesses in a sense. You put people in places that are going to do the things that you're not necessarily good at. Because I do agree. I think you're successful because of your relationship building, which is part of the reason that you probably struggled with cutting people off or vendors or whatever the case may be when you had to. So, all right,
Absolutely.
good stuff, dude. All right, so pandemic. You opened in 2019. What month? At the new spot.
The new spot. Good question, but it was definitely before March or February, whenever that hit.
Well, the pandemic hit 20, so you had been there a year when.
About a year and some change. Yeah.
What did he do? I mean, you got to ask the question: what the hell did you guys do? Because the restaurants industries hurt tremendously when that happened. What was it like? How did you guys stay open? Did you just eat it and you had enough money, or did you find creative ways to sell?
Well, there was a moment in February where I was in DC with my family. Took my wife to DC. We went to go see some of the monuments, the Smithsonian, and we were with my parents, and my parents were hanging out. We were having lunch at this French restaurant, which was great. And my dad gets an email. Remember, my dad was working for the government at the time. And he gets an email and he's like, oh shit, yo fam, look at this email. Like they're basically telling us to put on your seatbelt because shit's about to get ugly. So I'm looking at him like, what the fuck are you talking about? And he's like, oh, this pandemic and there's COVID. And so me and my wife and my mom, we're all looking at him like, oh, okay, sure. Yeah. Boom. We come back from DC and man, like clockwork. It was like the next day. I think from that moment he showed me the email to when we're back in Miami, probably maybe 2 weeks, right? COVID is still like in the news and things are being questioned. Are they getting shut down? And from one day to the next, boom, shit just starts getting shut down. And we end up in phases. I don't know if you guys remember too much, but everything happened in phases. Like, oh, only this many people can be here, 6 feet apart, etc. Yeah. So as these phases were coming out, the restaurant was following the guidelines, right? What are we going to do? Are we going to fight the government? You know what I mean? So
you're going to die too because everybody was scared of that.
Yeah, exactly. More importantly, let's keep everybody safe. So amongst the staff alone, there was, panic. A lot of people started to drop out and we started to go down in phases. Eventually we got to the phase where it was just me, my brother, my boy Randy, and my wife working the restaurant. And that's it. There was no one else there. I had 50 something employees at one point before that. By the time we got to that point, it was just 4. So imagine we were doing everything you needed to do, except there wasn't tableside service anymore. We were giving food over the counter. So we adapted in every way possible. Our biggest adaptation was, oh shit, how do we sell food? Our takeout exploded. We were up like 30-40% on takeout. And well, I guess we're going to do takeout now. So we shifted our entire business model to takeout. And that's the clause on the contract now. Yeah. Like if something were to this is never going to happen, Yeah. But if it did, I know how to still make money and I know how to survive your business. And so we shifted into the takeout realm. And every phase was ugly. Every phase that we needed to adapt to was somewhat manageable, but we found ways to survive.
And I think that's kind of like the common denominator throughout every stage that you've walked me through is being resourceful.
Yeah, exactly.
Bro, so, and it's kind of full circle, correct me if I'm wrong here, but in the first location, capacity of 10, a lot of the people would take takeout for the simple fact that they just couldn't get a table inside. Exactly. So did it feel like you were back in the beginning, maybe just in a much bigger spot?
Absolutely. We definitely mentioned that several times too. Yeah. Because of the nucleus that was also working it, we were back down to what we started with Randy, my wife, and and my brothers.
Like 2014 all over again. It was 2014.
Yeah. And you know, I've always hired my friends too. All my friends at some point needed a job, so they all worked with me. So in those times, you know, some didn't want to work, some were working. So I always found ways to.
And it was hard to hire people too, because the freaking government was giving unemployment like crazy.
Well, that's a whole nother nine.
Bro, yeah.
That's the whole next year. Hiring back and recovering from it was harder than shutting down. You know, the post COVID was. Shit, you know, my restaurant was hot. We were popping. And how do I become relevant again and make people feel safe? You know, people were weird with each other.
Right.
You know, like kissing someone on the cheek
If you sneeze,
in Miami
like
was
fucking,
what do I do? You know, like so it was definitely a funk and a strange time to be alive. To be a business owner and survive it too was just as hard.
Yep.
But it was one of those challenges that I did, you know, ultimately didn't let me take me down.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, man, the people that actually doubled down and worked harder during COVID are the ones that are still standing today.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
we started our business during COVID, and a lot of people folded or went to take unemployment. It would have been easier. The government was giving out money to just kind of,
Absolutely.
you know, play the,
I couldn't hire anyone.
or play the, it's not working out, it's not safe, let's just see what happens. And I'm glad you didn't do that, because obviously it's paid off now.
Yeah,
It's freaking booming.
yeah. I kept everyone that I could on board. I never fired anyone. Everyone just kind of left on their own. And then anyone who wanted to come back when they were ready came back. So, you know, my doors were always open, and we needed the help.
Of course, yeah, you needed
You
the
know?
manpower. Dude, so I'm going to turn the page for something we spoke about offline before we got on, but there's the hospitality industry, specifically being a server, bartender, working in restaurants. It's a dangerous area for, you know, teenagers to early 20s, because you get into it and it's kind of like this trap in a sense, right? Where you're making good money, it supports the lifestyle of somebody who's young, and then you have people that end up being lifers in it, right? And you're obviously an example of making something out of that and something great out of that. What do you think is the biggest, I guess not mistake, but the biggest, is it a lack of vision that people have? Like, why do people get stuck in the world of hospitality for so long at the level where they're waiting tables? Because a lot of them don't even want to move into management positions. They like the quick money. What do you think you attribute that to? One, and two, what advice do you have for them? You know, any 22-year-old you, like, or not even 22, before you left to Spain.
Yeah.
You know, when you were maybe still a little crazier and looking at business, what would your advice to them be?
I would say, you know, just as you mentioned, when you walk into the hospitality world, there's two types of people, in my opinion. There's the ones that are the lifers, as you mentioned, that they stick with this all the way through because they need that cash at the moment to put money in their pocket for whatever lifestyle they have going on. And that is the biggest reason why we see that. They either have kids, they're single parents, they're just funding their artistic careers, or they're just going through school. And then the other half is the ones that are using it as a pedestal just to make the money to get out. So the lifers, they make the money to fix their lifestyles. And then the ones that on the other half are the ones that are just, they're ready for their careers. They're waiting to get hired from the firm. They're waiting for that reassuring money that's coming. Yeah. So for my advice to you as a 20-year-old who's in this industry is to not really let the restaurant dictate, you know, where you're headed in life, but instead use that as that pedestal that you need to open up your communication skills, make those contacts that you're going to use later in life. And realistically, if you're going to stick as a lifer, find ways to get involved for what you can make as a restaurateur, right? Which could be like, if you're into pizza, make some pizzas, bro, and get that brick oven and do some pop-ups, and then start your gram, and then from your gram, throw in some ad money behind it, build that website, and make it a business. Because those parties that you're doing, you know, you could charge $35 a person. Yeah, they're gonna eat hella pizza, these Napoleon pies that are fire, but you could put that at a wedding and 100%. Stuff, and there's money to be made, not just from serving in this hospitality realm, and then also, you know, it branches out into so many other realms of hospitality. So
okay, no, that's solid advice. I think the skill set that it takes to be good in the hospitality industry, because I'm sure a lot of people come in and out too that they just don't cut it, is typically the skills that you look for somebody who's successful, because you got to talk to people, you got to be friendly, you got to always kind of got to leave your bullshit outside the door, because you come in and you're depending on the service you provide, and these guys have, obviously you have it, but a lot of them have these skill sets, and it's a shame to see it go to waste. And I think you're a great example of what can come out of a little bit of creativity and a little bit of thinking outside the box without having to do a complete 180 and go to school or go to like start something completely new that you're not comfortable with. So
there's a moment a couple years ago, I think it was like 2 years ago, and I'm not gonna mention her name because she's awesome, but we don't want to put her out. But she had mentioned that she was a guest at the restaurant in 2014 as a 10-year-old. And now it's 2025 and she's 19, about to be 20. She's a server and she's killing it. And to her, this was a restaurant she idolized as a kid.
Wow.
And now she's working here and she's a server. And she started as she started as a host, and her language skills and her communication has grown so much. Now she's a part of the team. She's a badass, and I give her to her. She's probably one of the best servers we have. But it's the foundation that she found within tacos, and then the skills that she's learned throughout that have definitely put her in a place for the rest of her life. If you can speak to her, and I brought this up earlier, she can speak all the alcohol you want. And it's not because she drinks, because she don't even like drinking. She's not even of age to start it. But she'll tell you the differences between a rye and a whiskey, or what a rye whiskey is. Right. She'll give you all sorts of knowledge that, a grown man probably doesn't have, or a grown woman doesn't have. You know what I mean? She knows how to now navigate in a world where a lot of money's involved. 100%. You know what I mean? And she can use these skills later on in life. And I think it's so cool to watch that into the different stages, right?
Of course.
The one where she came to tacos where she was a child, to the one where she's working at tacos, to the skill that she has, and she's probably one of the best ones at tacos.
The language of the rich.
And now where's she going? Those things I feel like are going to be the stepping stones in her life to where she will be now. Breaking out that comfort zone, breaking out that shell is one of those things that the restaurant business definitely does.
Yeah. And you strike me as the type of person that enjoys kind of putting others on, and obviously you give everybody an opportunity and some kind of grab it and run with it way further than other ones, and she seems to be one of those. So good for you and good for her, man.
Yeah.
So
I don't gatekeep. Yeah. Ask away.
Yeah, that's amazing. So all right, let's turn the page a little bit. Restaurant is your business, will support you, your family. Obviously, you've been extremely successful at it, but you have mentioned you have a lot of other passions. I know you got a couple other things that you work on. Do you want to maybe talk a little bit about those?
Absolutely.
And some of your other companies and the other things you work on?
Absolutely. One of my biggest focuses is my family. We mentioned that again, but I do have my wife and my two beautiful kids who I focus hopefully everything I can on them, and I hope they see that that's my biggest focus for them, is to watch them grow into this beautiful nucleus that we have. So that's one of my, if not my biggest thing that I've got outside the restaurant. Then my artistic career has definitely taken its path, not only in DJing, hopefully producing, but I also do produce events on my own. I produce videos with my boys. I'm a great liaison for making activations happen, finding the funds to make these sort of things happen. I'm working really close with my All But Six family. They're a label that represents Puya, Fat Nick, Kill Switch, Lou, and a bunch of other homies that are doing really well. So I'm finding my niches within the communities that I love and the things that I love, and I'm not stopping. So the restaurant has definitely been a pedestal for me to get into that position. And now I'm finding ways to involve myself with more artistically driven paths. And I see something promising coming really soon with this. So
yeah, and you're gonna manifest that. But 1 and 2, clearly vision is one of your strong suits. So
yes,
I have no doubt you're gonna get to wherever you're going. So
yes, sir.
Kudos to you, man.
Another thing we've got going on too, Airbnbs.
Okay.
Got some Airbnbs on the way too. I've got my first official one as of last February. We're in Banner Elk, North Carolina, and it's going really well for us as well.
Congrats.
And now we're moving into our hopefully another location soon. Probably either Denver, Colorado, or maybe sticking to Banner Elk. We're not too sure, but I'm expanding the portfolio into
Good for you, man.
real estate, and
Yeah, I mean, real estate is definitely a rich man's language, and
Yeah.
kind of Oliver goes. I
It's
would
a
say.
good one. It's a good one.
for
It's
sure,
very,
dude.
very lucrative.
Do you feel weird when you're having these conversations, looking back at where you were, dropping out of high school to where you are now? Like, does it feel?
I wouldn't say feel weird. I definitely feel, being proud of myself is close to conceited. So, it's hard to say, but I definitely feel as if I'm taking the right steps to continue to excel in life
Yeah. And I think,
in the way I want to, at least.
And do you think being surrounded by the right people has played a part in that?
That is 100% a fact.
Yeah,
That is
for sure.
100% a fact. There's people that I love that I don't want to be around. And there's people that I haven't met that I'm looking forward to meeting, and sharing more ventures with.
Sure.
So, absolutely.
That's awesome. I don't want to touch, we don't have to get too deep into this, but you mentioned you have 2 kids. How did being a father change?
Oh,
your
man. Being a father is awesome. It's so good. I wanted to be a young father, that's for sure. I was never scared of becoming a father. I got an 8-year-old beautiful son. His name is King Louis, aka Jonathan Louis, and I got a 9-month-old. His name is Zen, little Zen boy, and my wife Alexa. And that dynamic that we have is incredible. My kids are very far apart in age, but it's so cool to see how Louis will do whatever he can for Zen. And Zen sees the spark in Lou, and they make each other laugh, and you can't top that feeling. You can't top the feeling of my older one wanting to save things for my younger one. And, it's just, that's so surreal. Being a father is so cool,
It's the dopest thing you'll ever do, for sure.
And, there's things that, I wish my son would do in the ways I want him, but I also learn always that that's not the way. And as much as I push something on him, I try not to. I try to let them be them, and learning from how I was raised. I was raised in a military household, and things were really strict, and my family was new to this country, so we were always going through those cultural differences in life, where my parents were on one end and how they grew up, it was completely different to what was going on around me at the time. And I want to make those decisions for my kids a little more seamless, and I want them to have that confidence in with me, where they won't have to hide certain things at certain points, and maybe they will, but I think the freedom for understanding each other is a lot more open.
Yeah, and ultimately, I mean, you did shit that most kids end up doing turn out bad, and it comes down to the values that were instilled in you. Those never wavered, and I think I agree with you. A lot of the way that we were raised, because my upbringing is very similar. I couldn't do shit without getting in trouble. And
absolutely.
And then the more they tell you no, the more you want to do it. But I have a 4-year-old, and it's kind of the same deal. Like, let him make decisions for himself, and it's just instill values rather than rules, in a sense. That's kind of how we run it in my household. But it's wonderful to see, dude. It's beautiful to see, man, because it's such a unique story. And a lot of the shit you're telling me, I had no clues. I found out you dropped out of high school 30 minutes before we started talking, and I was like, holy fuck, this is gonna be good, because I didn't go to college, but I barely skated through high school, but going back to the household, my mom was not playing around. I had to finish school, and a lot of the successful people didn't go to college, and a lot of them didn't even finish high school, clearly, and I think what I've gotten from this conversation with you, Jay, the most thing that I've gotten is you're authentic, and that you never change who you are, and you manage to monetize the shit that you grew up loving.
Yes, sir.
Which a lot of people are not fortunate enough to do, or not really smart and creative enough to do. I think creativity obviously played a big part, but it's so pleasing and wonderful to see somebody, we're actually the same age, so somebody in our age group to do so well at such a young age.
Thank you.
And dude, it's incredible, man. We're gonna wrap up. And I don't know, am I spot on with the time? My internal
9:35.
My internal clock. Tell you, my internal clock. But to wrap up, bro, and you kind of gave advice earlier to the young server, so you already kind of touched on this. But I ask everybody that comes on, if you could go back to, in this case, it's just, at what age did you go backpacking in Spain?
I was 18.
All right, so 18-year-old Jay, tatted up probably at that point a lot, wants to go travel the world, has not a care, doesn't give a fuck about shit, clearly, because I'm not a backpacker, dude. I like luxury. I was not meant to struggle in life. But what advice would you give 18-year-old Jay today, knowing what you know now?
Ooh. the advice I'd give myself at 18 would probably be, I would have told myself to manage my money a little better.
Yeah.
I think there was a time where I could have made smarter moves and, you know, maybe been in a different position than I am right now. And money management was never taught in my household, not because my parents didn't want to. It was something that it was just hard,
Right.
you know? And they tried, but I would tell myself, instead of taking that trip and with all that money that I had saved, because even though I backpacked, I still had money in the account because, you know, I needed to eat.
Of course.
Could have used that money in other ways. Okay. And I might have paid for my experience throughout Spain, but I probably could have, you know, invested in something else that probably would have made maybe a little more money.
Sure.
And
it comes at a price that is maybe not monetary, but also time, right?
Yeah.
A lot of, for me, it's always getting time back. You don't get that time back, but well, not too shabby where you are today, bro. So nothing to be ashamed about, obviously. But
facts.
Hey, if we were all perfect, then we don't have a crystal ball to tell the future.
Yeah, facts,
we did,
facts,
and
facts.
everybody be rich. So
it was all worth it.
Dude, thank you so much for taking the time to come in here, bro.
Thank you for taking the time to have me, bro.
Appreciate you coming on, and I can't wait till you cut and edit this because it's going to be good, bro.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you.
No, you killed it, bro.
Fuck yeah. Thank you.